There's something to be said about the relentless curiosity of a child, constantly asking why. And there is a solid use case for it in business as well. And yet people have a reluctance to pursue new questions, new perspectives, new paths. That's not something you can say of my guest today though. He's constantly pushed creative boundaries, he's built massive businesses, and yes, he's had an outsized impact on people as well. Without further ado then, let's dive into our next C-suite conversation with Mainak Dhar, who's the MD of McCain India. Mainak Dhar wears many hats but considers his most important job to be the best possible father and husband he can be. An alumnus of the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, he has led businesses in the corporate world for over 25 years at organizations like Procter & Gamble, General Mills and Kimberly-Clark, including 10 years as CEO. He currently serves as MD of McCain India. Mainak considers himself lucky to have been able to pursue his passion for writing along with his career, and when not with family or at work, he can be found working on his next book. Marksman Daily presents C-Suite Conversations. Mainak, thank you so much for being here with us as part of this episode of C-Suite Conversations.
Thank you so much, Karan, for having me over.
Let me open up by talking to you about your career, where you've dabbled in multiple things. You've led large-scale FMCG organizations, you've had an AI-powered mentoring platform, you've written multiple best-selling books. How does all of this serve to shape your leadership style or philosophy?
First of all, Karan, I don't think I have a philosophy. I think it sounds pretentious to say we have a philosophy about life or leadership, but I think there's a core belief that underlies everything I do, and it's not just at work, as a writer, as a mentor, but it's also with family and how I relate to people.
Right.
And I think the core belief I have is it's really important to form authentic connections with people.
Yeah.
That's much more important than the transactions of it, because often what happens is people approach anything, whether it's work, whether it's business, whether it's relationships, in a transactional way. What are you getting from me? What am I getting for you? And I think the most powerful things happen when you're really trying to form authentic connections, which are really based on how can I be of service to you. So whether it's at work, it's really me being of service to the people in my team, to my customers, to my consumers. As a writer, it's me being of service to the reader. And as a mentor, it's me being of service to those who might need my mentoring. And my belief is if the whole world operated like that, we'd be a much better place.
So let's take a step back and talk about your time mentoring people, some 3,000 people across 30 countries. Often it's seen that teaching or leading can be something of a process of osmosis, where the teacher or leader learns from those being taught or led. Did you learn anything in particular through this entire mentoring experience of yours?
Absolutely. I've been passionate about mentoring for a very long time. I've been lucky to have some great mentors on my own journey. And over time, I realized there's a limit to how many people I can physically mentor. And I saw all the developments of AI happening around us. And I thought, may as well teach an old dog some new tricks, upscaled myself on AI, and created this platform on Mentoring by Mainak, where, really distilling my writing, my posts, my books into making mentoring accessible for anyone who needed it. So that's been operational now for about 8 or 9 months. And I've been really grateful for the response it's got. Over 3,000 people, as you said, have sought out mentoring through that platform. The biggest thing I've learned through that and through my other mentoring approaches is the small things matter. Because people often think of mentoring as this big thing. I'll get some life-changing gyan that's going to transform my career and my life. It doesn't work like that. So when I scan through the kind of questions people ask, they may seem small, but they're incredibly powerful. How do I deal with a certain meeting? I'm going for an interview, how should I show up? Should I go for job A or job B? I'm not getting along with my boss, how should I manage him or her better? These are small, everyday decisions where I've realized people often wish they had someone they could turn to. If I turn back the clock when I was much younger, I wish I had somebody I could turn to for those small decisions. And it's been incredibly enriching for me because it's also taught me to be much more mindful of those small things in life. Because often we make big decisions, the cornerstone of choices we make, but often it's those small, everyday choices we make that can have a big impact. And that's where mentoring can be really powerful.
Correct. All of them just add up to create something so much bigger.
Exactly.
Another thing that jumped out at me over the course of your career was you've led multiple large-scale FMCG organizations. What is it that excites you so much about the consumer opportunity perhaps in India, if I were to put it that way?
Well, the first thing is what excites me about being in the consumer space is fundamentally creating something that's of use to people. So if I think long back when I was in business school, so not to sound too old, over almost 3 decades ago, in my first year at IIM Ahmedabad, I don't think I knew what I wanted to do with my career. Like most people who are 20, 21 years old, I did my summer internship with Hindustan Lever. And I was an intern working in the foods business, but I found it fascinating that I'm working on something that people are going to use. The very act of, I was giving samples to consumers, going back and checking how they felt about it, that just fascinated me. Because I thought rather than just working on numbers on a spreadsheet or ideas on a slide, this is real stuff. You're creating ideas, you're creating brands that become a part of people's lives. And I think that's what's kept me energized about being in the consumer sector now, almost 3 decades on. As I look forward, I'm really bullish about the prospects of the consumer sector in India. So there's of course the growth. Everyone talks about the Indian economy, GDP growing 7%, all of that's there. But I think what's most exciting is the quality of that growth. And I think there are a couple of things really underlying it that make it really exciting, not just for the consumer sector, but for our society as a whole. The first is the nature of the demographics of the growth. India has an incredibly young population compared to most other major economies. And with youth comes energy, comes innovation, comes aspiration, comes a desire to try new things. That's exciting. That's exciting for all of us, not just in terms of the growth of the consumer sector, but the kind of ideas that come up, the kind of startups that are being created, the kind of innovation that's happening around us. The second thing linked to that is digitization. I mean, India has always, I think, been a leapfrog economy. If you think of it, a few decades ago, we had landlines and we jumped to mobiles.
You skip certain levels.
We've skipped certain levels, and that's happening with digitization on how people are engaging with brands, with content, how they're shopping. We're seeing that skip happen across many categories. I think that makes it really exciting because it opens up new ways for brands to engage with consumers, for people to find out what's happening in the world around them. And the final piece, which I think is most exciting, is the democratization that comes with this. I mean, if you think back 2 decades ago, if you were living in a small town in India, you did not have access to some information, trends, opportunities that someone living in a posh area in Mumbai did. Now that playing field is being leveled. And that's really exciting, not just for the consumer sector, but I think for our society and country as a whole.
I first heard about you on a radio show, incidentally. I think I've told you about this, where your latest book at that point in time, I think 302, was being given away as a freebie. And I find that endlessly fascinating when somebody can exist at the intersection of creativity and business, because sometimes it's seen as the two poles being apart. I don't think it necessarily is. But what I wanted to ask you really was, how did you take that creative mindset, and use it to apply it to, say, business strategy and innovation? How do you get those two to come together?
Actually, I don't think the two are as far apart as people think. And it's not, I'm not doing anything special. I'm just another guy who's trying to live an authentic life, who's got multiple sides to his life, who's just trying to be true to them. And I think every single one of us has those aspects to us, right? I mean, as a society, we label people. This guy's in the corporate sector, this guy's a creative type. Ultimately, we all have different sides to our personality. And I think when we bring all of those together, we form really interesting connections. So if I think about what's the core of writing, what do you think is the core of writing fiction?
Writing fiction? I think if I were to use it one word, hyphenated, world building. Just creating this universe where somebody can escape to, in a sense, where they can exist in.
It is world building. Even one level deeper is understanding people. Because you can only write compelling
you get
fiction,
into the skin of the character.
Exactly, when you know how people think, when you can portray characters in an authentic and relatable way, when you can bring out motivations of different people. So I think one of the core skills as a writer is actually people watching and understanding people. And if you connect that to the world of business, the core of success in business is understanding people. How to motivate teams.
Maybe the most important piece.
Maybe the most important thing, exactly. How to understand customers, consumers, stakeholders. So that's the biggest intersection which sometimes people don't get, because they look at the, I'd say, outward aspects of creativity, which is writing, ideas, that's all there. The second part, I think, that creativity really teaches you, someone said it, I don't know who said it, is creativity is not creating something new, it's making connections that others didn't. And I think that's also the core of success in business. If you just keep doing things the way they've always been done, chances are you're not going to get new results. But when you're forming new connections, an insight you heard somewhere with a technology that might be possible, an emerging need with a business issue you have to solve, it's forming those connections that often leads to great results. And I think the final thing which is really important is, I think success in life, not just business, to a large extent comes down to storytelling.
Yeah.
Every single day, you, me, the people watching this, all of us are writing our own stories and we're telling our own stories. And sometimes it manifests itself in a more formal way. You're in an interview. But it's the everyday interactions you have with people that leave an impact on who you are, leaves back some residual brand equity of you, your brand. And I think storytelling is a skill, I think that's really important.
Vitally so for today's leaders.
Exactly, which people don't teach. I mean, back when I was in business school, they taught about a bit of presentation, but it was stand in front of a large group and present slides. But I think the whole idea of how do you authentically connect, tell stories, engage, that's something that writing teaches that I think really helps in the world of business.
Those skills are definitely transferable. I couldn't agree with you more. Even if you think of today's most iconic leaders, or maybe those from maybe the last decade or two, they all had a story to tell and they did so fantastically. Right. My last question to you, you have this AI mentoring platform today. If you could somehow use it to give a younger Mainak words of wisdom, advice, insight, how would you go about doing that? What would you say to him?
No wisdom to offer. I think we all learn. In hindsight, it's very easy to say, I wish I knew X. That's how life is. I think that's part of the
so many what ifs.
That's part of the joy of life. But if I could turn back time, if I could have a chance to talk to my younger self 3 decades ago, I wouldn't say anything about career.
Really?
I wouldn't, because career figures itself out. You figure things out. The advice I'd give my younger self is spend more time with your parents. I've lost both my parents, unfortunately. I lost my mom in my mid-20s, my father 12 years ago. And when you're growing up in the rat race, in the hurly-burly of getting ahead, the exuberance of being independent, having a job, building a career.
You do lose sight sometimes.
And I wish I had spent more time with them than I did. I think I was a good son, but when they're no longer there, you remember and you say, hey, I wish I'd said this, I wish I'd done that. That's the advice I'd give. And that's the advice I'd give to anybody who's joining the world of work today is, work is great. The corporate world is wonderful. You can learn things, you can add value, you can grow your career.
Correct.
But don't lose sight of what really matters, which is your family.
Absolutely. You can't miss the forest for the trees, so to speak. Mainak, was lovely chatting with you, picking your brain, meeting you after so long. Thank you so much for being part of this episode.
Thank you for having me over. Great meeting you again.
Pleasure. If I could leave you with one big takeaway from my conversation today with Mainak Dhar, it's this. There's a certain potency to authenticity and being honest to yourself and the people around you. Keep it real until the next episode of C-Suite Conversations. I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.